Today, we're diving into the invisible forces that shape our entire world. We're talking birth rates, death rates, and the very personal choices that build nations. This is all about demography, the science that tells the incredible story of us, our global family, and, believe it or not, helps predict our future. I mean, think about it for a second. How do you even begin to tell the story of a billion people? It's such a massive number, it feels abstract, almost impossible to wrap your head around, right? But there's a science that does exactly that, and it gives us a surprisingly clear picture of where we've been, where we are, and where we're going.
And that science is called demography. You can think of it as the playbook for understanding how populations change. Demographers look at everything, births, deaths, where people move, to figure out the big patterns. It's really the science of telling our collective story, just using numbers.
So, how does a population story actually play out? Well, like any good story, it turns out there's a plot, a predictable series of stages that almost every country goes through as it develops. It's a journey we can actually map. Okay, take a look at this. This is our roadmap. It's called the demographic transition model. See those two lines? The top one is the birth rate, and the bottom one is the death rate. And that big space between them? Well, that's where the story of population growth really happens. Let's walk through it, stage by stage. So every story has a beginning, and for populations, that's stage one. Think of India way back before 1920. You have very high birth rates, but you also have very high death rates. Families might have lots of children, but tragically, due to things like disease and poor sanitation, many don't survive. The two forces basically cancel each other out, so the population size, it pretty much stays flat. And then we hit stage two. This is where the plot really thickens. All of a sudden, with better healthcare and more food, the death rate just plummets. But, and this is the key, the birth rate stays high. That massive gap opens up between the two lines, and that means one thing, a population explosion. And this creates huge new challenges, right? How do you feed, house, and educate all these new people? In stage three, society starts to catch up. As people get more education, move to cities, and as women have more opportunities, the birth rate finally starts to come down, closing that gap. Now, the population is still growing, sure, but way more slowly. Modern-day India and China are perfect examples of countries in this phase. And this brings us to the final chapters of the story. In stage four, you get stability again, but this time it's a low and slow kind of stability. Both birth and death rates are low. Think of places like the UK. And some countries even enter a possible stage 5, where the birth rate actually dips below the death rate, and the population starts to shrink. We see this happening in places like Japan and Germany. Now, here's another really cool way to see this story. These are called population pyramids. They're basically a snapshot of a country's age structure. So look at India on the left. See how wide that base is? That means a huge proportion of the population is young. Now look at Switzerland on the right. It's not a pyramid at all. It's more of a column with a bulge in the middle. That's an aging population. These simple shapes tell you so much about a country's present and its future. And one of the most important numbers in this whole story is the total fertility rate, or TFR. It's just a fancy way of saying, what's the average number of children a woman is expected to have? For India, that number is now 2.0. That single number tells you so much about where a country is on its journey. Okay, so we're seeing these massive nation-level shifts. But how do we actually navigate them? Well, the answer comes down to something much more personal, and that's family planning. This is the point where individual choices start to write the story of an entire nation. The World Health Organization has this great definition. They call it a way of thinking and living. I want you to notice a couple of key words here: voluntarily, health and welfare, and social development. This is about empowerment for individuals, for families, and for society as a whole. And its goals are all about giving people control. And look, it's not just about avoiding unwanted births. It's also about helping people have the children they want, when they want them. It's about spacing pregnancies in a healthy way. At the end of the day, it's all about choice. So, if it's about choice, what are the actual tools that make that choice possible? Let's get practical and open up the toolkit. Think of this next part as a kind of compass for navigating the options. This flowchart lays it out perfectly. It's like a fork in the road. On one path, you have temporary methods, the things you use to space out pregnancies. And on the other path, you've got permanent methods, for when you know your family is complete. So that's the first big distinction, and it's absolutely crucial. Spacing methods are for planning the family you're building. Terminal methods are for when you've decided that building is finished. Both are incredibly important tools.
just for different moments in life. Let's look at a spacing method. This is a diaphragm. It's what's known as a barrier method. Pretty straightforward, right? It physically blocks sperm from getting where it needs to go. The key thing here is that it's controlled by the user and doesn't involve hormones. And here's another really popular spacing method, the IUD. These little T-shaped devices are a total game changer for many. They can provide super effective contraception for years at a time, but they're also completely reversible. It's kind of a set it and forget it option, which is a huge plus for a lot of people. But how well do these things actually work? This chart tells the story. A lower bar means it's more effective. Now, look at the male condom. The failure rate can be kind of high because it relies on being used perfectly every single time. Now compare that to the tiny bars for the IUD and the oral pill. The difference in real-world effectiveness is, well, it's significant. And then on that other path of our compass, we have those terminal methods. This means procedures like a vasectomy for men or sterilization for women. These are simple, permanent options for people who are absolutely certain they don't want to have more children. Okay, so we've looked at the massive, big picture story of population change, and we've looked at the very personal toolkit of family planning. Now, let's connect those dots and see how one directly shapes the other. And this lays it out perfectly. It starts with one person making a choice. That choice leads to better health and well-being for their family. And then, when you multiply that choice by millions and millions of families, that is what creates the massive demographic trends we saw at the very beginning. It's the ultimate example of how tiny actions create enormous results. And really, it all boils down to this one simple concept: completed family size. That simple, personal number, the total kids one woman has, is the fundamental building block of everything else. This is the exact point where a personal story becomes the story of an entire population. So from the epic journey of a nation down to the private choice of an individual, demography and family planning are woven together. They show us that the grand story of humanity isn't something that just happens to us. It's a story that we are all actively writing, together, every single day. The only question is, what story will we write next?